YouTube, it's William. About a chilly morning this morning, a little frost on the pumpkin. And this may be a long video, but we're going to talk about the new Master Bushman. And I'm going to insert some videos here and there of the R&D phase and kind of give you an idea of what the design is and the thought process behind it and the benefits of all of these curves and straights and different grind angles and all this other good stuff. Okay, so stick with me. It's we're going to start at the pommel and work our way to the tip. All right, so here's the knife, and it's available to pre-order at greatnorthernknives.com, one of my dealers, and it will be made out of 5/32 nitro V stainless steel. The blade on it is about 4 inches, and the overall is about 9 or a little over. All the specs will be in the screen below. Okay, so let's start at the pommel. The pommel has a little bit of a hammer pole so that you protect your handle, and that is, I mean, if you're injured or whatever and you have to use one hand, it's beneficial for that. So you can just kind of stab it in a stump, hammer it in, and use one hand to do feathers, curls, whatever you need to do. Maybe you'll see it a little bit better on this side. Okay, like so. That's one. I mean, crafts, if whatever you need to do to hammer that point in, then that's what that hammer pole is there for, to protect the handle so you don't chip your handle and break your handle up. It has my standard contoured handle for different grips. The lanyard is back here so that you can use it for it changes the weight and the balance of the knife. Basically, you use it like a leiku. You have that bubble there to help you hold on. Plus, you have a lanyard there with your little finger through there, so that you can use speed when you're chopping. Also, delimbing things like so, and it just helps you. It changes a small knife and makes it act like a larger knife. Okay, so then you have the next grip, which is just your standard grip that you see on all knives, and then you have the forward grip with that little bubble right there to hold on to it up there at the top. And with a little bit of practice, a lot of people say, well, you're gonna cut your finger on that, but you're not. With a little bit of practice, you'll be fine, because that's indented. And get my tongue to work right, so that your hand does not squeeze that part. You're squeezing right there where that finger is. That's just curled around it. Okay, so it gives you a very secure grip. So you don't need a finger guard, because you have that little bubble right there so you have a secure grip without the finger guard getting in the way. Of course, you have thumb scallops. You see the thumb scallops, and that's for them chest lever cuts. So you get a lot of that power in there, so your thumb rests comfortably during those cuts. Okay. So that's the handle. I mean, it has a lot of contours for control, because if you don't control a knife, then it's a dangerous knife. So I put contours in a handle so that you can control it. A control knife, you don't want to cut yourself. So if you control the blade, then 9 times out of 10, you're not going to cut yourself. All right. Now, there are exceptions to every rule. One other thing right here is that part right there is flat, if you can see that flat part, and that's for a thumb rest. Because a lot of times you want to do push cuts, but the blade, the spines on my blades are 90 degrees, and they will eat your thumb up if you don't have a protector on it. So I put a flat spot right there so you can do push cuts like so, and they're comfortable. Right there in that curved blade to give you that control and that power, okay? Now let's get into the blade. The blade is wider here for the strength. You have strength. The weakness of the blade is right there where that grind stops, because any 90-degree angle, that's going to be where the vibration occurs and all this other stuff when you're using the baton. So you have vibration. If you watch my video, the batoning, the good, the bad, the ugly, it talks about vibration and harmonics in the blade. So that's the weakest part of the blade, is right there, typically. So I widen that out so you have more steel there, so it's a stronger blade. I also have used 5/32, not necessarily for strength, because with today's steels, you really don't need thickness for strength. You need thickness for splitting apart materials, okay? And as I'm batoning here, building this fire, you'll see that it splits apart material very well because of the 5/32 blade, okay? But there's a trade-off. You get a lot of separation for that thickness, but also it's a pinch point when you're trying to slice something, okay? So we'll get into to the other grinds and why that is in a minute. But this curved here, as you see doing feathers and things like that, that curve assists, because either way that you're cutting into an edge, okay? So if you're slicing this way, then you're hitting an edge up this way, okay? So that blade is always forcing itself and assisting you in a cutting process, okay? Instead of just sliding off with a straight edge, you have something that goes up against a sharpened edge, okay? That's the reason for the curve. Now the next part is the tooth, and that tooth is just unbelievable. If you can imagine what you're doing when you're cutting with just a flat portion, you have two sides, or just one angle that's cutting, or two angles. You have just this part cutting, but on this tooth, as you can see the facet there, okay, you're cutting in 4 different ways. So if you just that one little lick, you can see how far that tooth cut in. Now if you just did it straight, so you only get about half the cutting power with a straight blade. So when you're chopping or when you're cutting, that tooth, see, it just eats away the wood. Also, it's great for packages. You can slice open those packages like shown here. And you know, a lot of times you have delicate stuff in those packages, and if you use a blade, sometimes you cut your merchandise, and that ain't good. So here, you just use that tooth and just rake across it, and your package is open, and you don't cut your merchandise in the box. So it's a very beneficial for that. The other thing is when you're doing chest lever cuts, that power, instead of sliding off on a straight edge, that power is coming up against that tooth. So with less effort, you have still the same cut, okay? So the tooth is just, it benefits that portion as well. And of course, cutting leather like you see here, you're slicing up against that tooth. You'll find once you use one with a tooth like that you'll wonder how you got along without it, to be honest with you. Okay, and it's reinforced with that facet, so it's a stronger portion. It's also a wedge, so it assists in the batoning process, whether you're building a pot hanger or whatever you're building. As I was doing with this tri-stick doing all the cuts and batoning and everything, then it just enhances the carving and campcraft requirement that you're going to need doing those bushcraft tasks. Okay, so then we get to the next portion, and that's kind of a flat saber grind, and it's straight. Okay, so when you start cutting your vegetables and things like that, as shown here, your hand is off of the table, but you're coming up against a straight saber port that doesn't have that wedging property like a Scandi does. Okay, so you're actually has more slicing power and less effort when you're slicing vegetables, when you're cutting leather, when you're cutting a lot of things that's very dense. Then you have a very good slicing power there. So even when you're doing feathers with a Scandi portion, see, you just wants to just hog off some wood. But if you come up to the thin portion, then you lay that blade over next to the wood and get those very fine, thin curls. So you just have more control with the blade in those in the Scandi or the saber portion. So it just gives you more versatility. That's what different grinds do. It gives you different versatility in cutting options. Okay, so that's what that straight portion is. It gives you a straight edge to cut your vegetables, to do your wood planing, to flatten things off, like this here. When you're doing, like in this instance, I did a net needle, and you see me planing that off with that straight portion. And also, I forgot to mention on that hook, when you're cutting with that hook, it just, on those draw cuts, as you see me doing this net needle, it worked wonders with that. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things about this knife that went into the design of it that enhances your craftsmanship, enhances your ability to use this knife in many, many different ways. So, as with the WCSK, every one of the angles and curves and things is for a purpose to help in your bushcraft, if that's what you want to call it, woodscraft task. Okay. So now let's go to the point. The point is just raised just above center. Okay. So if you look from here to the center of the blade is about, the knife is about here. So it's just off center, but it still is enough to do those fireboards and all that good stuff that bushcrafters and woodcrafters likes to do. All those crafts and all kinds of stuff that you want that tip to be in the center or very close to the center to do that. The other thing about the tip is it's very fine, and as you can see, it slices very well when you get into those tight spaces, like doing the net needle here, and just general carving and all kinds of things like that. The other thing is it's not as sharp of a point as you see on a lot of carvers, but it still is sharp enough to do those tasks and still have some strength left there. Because a lot of times on the carving knives, the point is so sharp that it actually is a weak part of the knife. You have to be very careful with those very sharp carving points. But this one is kind of a happy medium, if you will. It's sharp enough to get into those tight corners, like in this net needle, but it's also strong enough to take care of the fireboards and things like that. Okay. The other thing is the spine is kind of curved, and the reason for that is so that when you're processing game, of course, you know, bushcraft, woodscraft, a lot of times you're processing game on camp, or you're hunting or whatever. So you need that tipped to be angled so that your hand is out of the way. As you see me slicing this leather, imagine that going up a deer's leg. Then it just works beautifully in the skinning process with the shape of that tip. and it also acts as a wedge, so it lifts and separates that skin from the body. Also, talking about skinning, this hook, if you imagine the hook, instead of using the point of the knife in those delicate areas around the gut cavity, if you just use that hook there, then you have a controlled depth. So as you're coming up that belly, then you're protecting those entrails and things from a sharp edge in more cases than if you were just going to use the tip of the knife. Now, a lot of people will, and this knife is able to do that very well, protect the tip with your finger if you choose to do that method. And it's wide enough to have a good purchase in doing that. Let me insert a video on sharpening this knife here right quick. I know that there's going to be those out there that say the knife is just too complicated to sharpen. As with all of my knives, they're very simple, okay? The edge is the same from the handle all the way to the tip. It's a 12-degree angle, no matter if it's a Saber, if it's a flat, if it's a whatever it is. It's the same cutting edge, okay? So basically, real quick, if you can find, and I do recommend the metal one. This is a DMT blue, and no, I do not know what the grit is, don't care. All right, the blue works for me. Red is fine as well. So I don't know what the grit is, but blue DMTs is great. All right. So if you just find that Scandi right here and just use the edge, this very edge right here, it contacts, and you can't do this with natural stones because they wear. So if you find that, just sharpen that point there to that facet, okay? Do it on both sides. Just work around the edge, the contour of the blade. That's what you're trying to follow. And then sharpen that part. Again, find that Scandi portion. And do the same amount of strokes on either side. Okay, if you want to use a bench stone, same thing is just hold it on that bench stone, go all the way through. Same amount of strokes, same amount of pressure on both sides. Okay, and again, if it's a bench stone, follow your contour. That way you keep your facet right here on your tooth. All right, and then you take just a piece of regular leather. I use the rough side, the flesh side. I don't put any buffing compound on it or anything. It's just clean leather. This one has just got steel particles in it. That's the reason it's black. And you just clean the edge. It's a few strokes on either side, and I mean it's like a razor blade. So you can see it right there. It just curls up the fingernail. All right. If you want, you can use the little ceramic rods. They work beautifully. Because you really don't, once you sharpen the knife once, unless you hit a rock or something and chip the blade, then you really don't need to sharpen it anymore. The rest of the time you're just touching up the edge and realigning that edge. One thing that I carry in my pocket at all times, it's on a key ring, is these little Victorinox mini sharpening steels. And all you got to do is just do a quick search on Amazon that says mini sharpening steel. Victorinox is the only one I recommend. All the others I do not recommend. Victorinox is the only one I recommend. And these work great. Again, you're just following the contours of the blade. Just like so. And all it takes is just a few licks. Don't wait till the knife gets dull. Touch it up every afternoon or every evening. Just when you get to the house, have these little sharpening stools right there by your big chair as you sit down to watch the news or whatever you're going to do. Hit it a few licks on there, you're ready to go tomorrow. Okay? So it's just that simple. And man, it is sharp. You just go through it. Hear it? I had to touch it with my beard. But there you go. It's that simple. All the knives are simply sharpened just that easily. Also, if you get a sheath or something from Randy at Stitch Gear, Outfitters. He had these, I think he still has these on his website. These little Victorinox mini sharpening steels. Phenomenal piece of kit. I have one with me at all times. All right. Okay, rest of the video. This is where I started at. I'm holding the camera here. I apologize if it's kind of shaky. This was A, but I wanted more of a pronounced point. And I wanted to take out some of the belly here. So as I was grinding, I pronounced the point a little bit more, but I put more belly in it because I'm a hunter at heart, okay? So I thought that more belly would be the answer. After using this B model prototype, I decided no, I wanted more of a bushcrafty knife. So this is C. I still left a little bit sharper point than A. I kept the point of B, but I brought the tip back more in line with A and straightened it out just a little bit more, and found that this is the perfect design for what I had in mind. So C model, after using it, and I'm going to insert some file footage of me doing the R&D at this point. And I used this knife to cut out 30 sheaths of leather sheaths, as you see in this video. And the tip and the point of it was just, it was still razor sharp, even digging into that cutting mat on the leather table. It still, and the angle when you're doing this knife, when you're cutting, you have the way the shape of the tip is, you're able to put more power and strength behind that cut. So it's just, this 8 or 9 ounce leather was just cut like butter. Just one cut and it was done. And the other thing about this knife is you have enough grip there, and the way the blade is shaped that you actually can do some intricate whittling and carving, like initials and just all kinds of things, because you can use it as a pencil. And it just the more I use this knife, the more I learn the knife, and it's a perfect EDC woodcraft, bushcraft. I thought that the Junior Woodsman was the perfect bushcraft knife, but I'm changing my mind. This here, with all of the curves, the tooth, the way the point is situated, the strength of the point, the angles and everything about this knife, it just blows me away, to be honest, folks. I think that this design is about as good as you're going to find anywhere on the market, and then better than most designs that you see. I think it's going to be a long time before I come up with another design that's going to be better than this one, as far as bushcraft, woodscraft, EDC, a craft knife. I just love it. I really do. I didn't think that, and I said this in another video, I never thought that I would find a knife that I liked more than the Nessie. Because the Nessie just kind of ticked the boxes for me. The size, the feel, the grip, everything about the Nessie I loved. It ticked a lot of boxes for me. But this one here, it ticks those boxes and then some. That tooth, those curves, that combined grind. I mean, whatever you can come across, whether it be food prep, game prep, carving on camp, whatever you're going to tackle, clearing camp. I mean, just thinking about cutting brush and whatever on camp, if you don't want to carry an axe with you, then just think about what this little small blade can do as far as clearing camp. I mean, limbs off of trees. It's just one whack and they're done. It's just, and again, the steel is Nitro V. You're not going to hurt the edge unless you hit a rock or something like that with it. And even everything that we've done, it's just like a razor blade. And hammering this edge into a seasoned red oak block. I mean, it's almost as if it just hits it and bounces off. Nitro V, a lot of people ask me my opinion about Nitro V compared to AEBL, and everybody knows that I love AEBL, and I still do. I think AEBL is a premier stainless steel. It is very easily sharpened. It holds a decent edge, holds a little bit better than 01 in fact. But after using this Nitro V for about 3 months, I don't want to say I would prefer Nitro V, but I think I will. One thing that I have found about Nitro V, and I haven't done an actual cut test side by side, but it does feel as sharp as AEBL. It slices as well as AEBL. One thing I had against AEBL was it showed some scuff marks a little bit more than say a lot of the other stainless steels. And Nitro V doesn't show those scuff marks as bad as say AEBL does. And two, AEBL is just so difficult to get. So I think that we're probably, unless there's a big shipment of AEBL comes in, I think we're going to just kind of, instead of trying to get different types of steel in the shop, we'll probably start working the Nitro V in as the premier stainless steel in the shop, because it, as you can see throughout all of these tests, it just takes a beating and keeps on ticking. It's a good stainless steel. So we're going to use the AEBL as long as we can, but in certain cases, Nitro V is what we're going to, and these will come in Nitro V, and you will not be disappointed at all. A matter of fact, a lot of people say that they prefer the Nitro V over the AEBL, and so I can't argue with them, but I do know that I prefer this knife over any knife that I've ever used as far as a daily carry. This knife, it goes with me to town. It goes, if I'm leaving the house, I have this knife on me for the past 2 weeks. No matter what I did, where I went, what occurred, cooking, whatever I was doing. This knife, even carving the steak at the dinner table, this was the knife. And as of right now, I don't see any other knife for me to carry on a daily basis than this knife. Now I have other knives that's a little bit more specially oriented, like the Sportsman's Choice is more toward a sportsman. The SK is a survival knife. But this one, as far as an everyday daily carry, woodsman's, bushcraft, one that you're going to do a little bit of firecraft, you're going to do some carving on camp, you're going to do some game prep, you're going to do some wood processing, things like that. With a, as long as you don't need a longer blade than a 4-inch blade, I think this is the knife that should definitely be in the top 2. Now, if you want a longer blade, of course, there's the other knives out there like the Blackbird and so on and so forth. That's a phenomenal knife, and also the Outfitter, which is coming out, is another phenomenal design in that blade length range. But anyway, I've rambled on about this knife because I hope I got across that I love this knife. I really do, folks. It's not a sales pitch. I love this knife. I feel about this the way I did about the SK. After 2 or 3 months of R&D and going back and forth and tweaking that design, I feel the same way about this knife I did about that knife. I felt complete. I felt that it was to the point to where it was ready to take on the world. And so that's how I feel about this knife. You can order it at greatnorthernknives.com, and the first run will have a 1 on the blade, and I think the first run will be about 40. We're getting those water jetted this week. So until the next one, you guys get in the backyard, whittle on a stick. Be sure and take a child with you if you get the opportunity, and don't forget those cleaning band-aids and lots of knives. We'll catch you again soon.